Eastward is a single-player action-adventure game with some role-playing aspects, originally releasing in 2021 after beginning development in 2015. Depending on what I feel like playing at the time, I frequently switch back between my PC, my PS5, or my Switch. I decided to pick up Eastward on my Switch a few months ago while it was on sale. I finally decided I wanted to give it a try, which is surprising because Assassin's Creed and Spider-Man 2, as well as Mario Wonders, all just recently came out. But I decided to pick up Eastward instead and play it before everything else. As always, I'm reviewing this game after completing the main story. I did beat this game on my Switch, so I did not go for the overall 100% completion of the game, because honestly, I'm too lazy to track everything when playing a game on my Switch. But I'll be going over things like the main story and the plot, combat and gameplay, enemies you'll find within the game, the progression system, how the equipment system works. I'll be going over the audio and soundtrack for this one, which is a little different, but I honestly really enjoyed how it sounded. Lastly, the price of the game, and my final thoughts if I think it's worth your time and money, or if you should wait for a sale or just overall ignore it. Well, let's talk about Eastward. Eastward's story consists of 8 different chapters, with each one containing a different piece of it. You begin playing as John, who is a digger in the town Potcrock Isle, along with his adopted daughter Sam, who he found along his travels. John basically took her in and essentially gave her everything he had. At the beginning, you are told that the outside world is inhabitable, that no humans or animals would ever be able to survive the world. You slowly learn about the post-apocalyptic world on the outside, that there is something called the miasma that has been attacking towns and people, and it essentially destroyed the world. At the start, not much is known about the miasma other than it destroys everything in its path, but as you progress the story, you will continue to gain the knowledge about the miasma and especially where it came from. Throughout it, you'll also get closer and closer to discovering Sam's secret and revealing her true identity. I don't want to spoil too much about the story, so that's really all I'm going to be talking about the story itself. But my actual thoughts on the story is, well, it's great. One of the biggest things I wanted to stress in this video is I'm honestly not the type of gamer who enjoys reading a ton, for the simple fact of the matter that I get distracted very easily by everything around me. But honestly, I thought the story was well put together, it kept me entertained and managed to keep my attention through a majority of the game. There were still some spots within it where I honestly wasn't 100% interested and didn't want to pay attention to it, but overall it did a good job at keeping me sucked into it. Some other things I really enjoyed about the story is the curveballs it throws at you. This is definitely not one of those games that you'll be able to predict everything that is going to happen next. There's so many moments where it can just keep you on your toes. The story itself continues to develop the two main characters, Sam and John, and even though John doesn't really say anything within the game, the devs did a great job at building a relationship between these two characters, and it continues to get better and grow as time goes on. Especially watching Sam grow individually as a character was something so great. One of the best parts, in my opinion, of the story was finding out Sam's real identity and building upon that to help develop the story. And this wasn't something that was introduced halfway through. No, from the very beginning of the story, it had set up its twists and turns and how it was going to play out without letting the player predict its next move. One of my biggest issues with the story, though, however, is some of the inconsistencies within it. Now, when I say this, I don't mean the whole story is going to be ruined due to one thing. One of the best examples I can give of this is there's an enemy named Solomon, and throughout the game you will fight 3 different versions of him. The game doesn't really do the best job at the beginning of explaining the purpose of them or what his job is or what he's there to do. But what you do know is each one of them have their own overall objective of what they're trying to achieve. There's a few other things that aren't clearly told in the story, but overall the story is absolutely wonderful and heartwarming in its own way. I definitely feel like it's worth experiencing for yourself. The world building within this game has to be one of my favorites, with such unique graphics and adorable art style. First, I want to talk about the towns. There's 4 different towns within the game that you can explore and experience. The towns consist of Potcrock Isle, Greenburg, New Dam City, and Esther City, if I'm saying that right. Each one of these cities having their own theme to them, which helps to continue build the world. For example, Potcrock Isle is the starting area, and it consists of a town that is completely underground. It's later hinted at the beginning of the game that all life on the surface is non-existent, but as you progress through the story, you end up in Greenburg, which is an absolutely beautiful forest area in town, which honestly has an extremely calming and relaxing tone to it, with all the trees and the river running through it. There's 2 major cities throughout the game that I want to talk about, which is New Dam City and Esther City. New Dam City is more or less what I would envision a city to look like during a post-apocalyptic world. It looks like everything was thrown together overnight with the hopes of it holding together. The big piece of New Dam City is the wind god, or the giant fan that is basically in place to blow the miasma away. The idea of this is great and can help in the role-playing aspect of the game. I just wish you could actually visualize the fan more. There's a few scenes where you notice it, but the most experience spent with it is when you're in the control room. The last place I want to talk about is Esther City, and this place is very nice and well done. They really did a great job with all of these locations. In my honest opinion, most of the time world building isn't the biggest make or break for me in a game. Do I hope that the game looks good? Yeah, of course. But Eastward did it right. Along with the cute and adorable art style, they built whole cities that, even though it's such a small game, each one of them have their own lore and history to them. It really gives gives you something to understand the backstory of the game. Next up, I want to discuss combat and gameplay, and I gotta say from the beginning with just how simple this game is, it was a ton of fun. To start off, let's talk about the combat, and it is fairly easy to get a grasp on. Playing as either John or Sam and having the ability to switch between characters depending on the type of situation at hand is pretty cool. While playing as John, you have access to 4 different main weapons and 3 different types of bombs. Each one of these weapons can be used in a different situation or really to fit whatever playstyle you want to use. The biggest thing to notice is whatever weapon you use, if it uses ammo, that each one of John's weapons share ammunition. So it is very easy to overuse and run out of ammo. The same thing with the bombs. The 3 types of bombs all share the same amount of bombs that you have access to, but the bombs are more or less meant to help you progress the story and solve puzzles. While playing as Sam, you have access to different abilities. In total, there are 4 abilities for Sam. 2 of these abilities are unmissable and obtained throughout the story. However, 2 of these abilities are missable if you don't know where to find them throughout the story. But I will say, even if you do miss them, they're not make or break abilities that you have to beat the game. I say this from personal experience because my first playthrough of the game, I ended up missing the 2 abilities and didn't find them and didn't even know about them, but I was still able to complete the game without them. Having the ability to switch back and forth between characters during combat makes for a unique experience. Personally, I found myself primarily stunning and bubbling enemies with Sam's bubble ability and then using John's frying pan. Honestly, I didn't find myself using the other weapons very much during combat. There was very few times where I found that I actually needed them. Next up, one of the major components within the game is the puzzles. Now, I know I mentioned earlier I was not a big fan of text-based games, while I'm also not a big fan of puzzle-based games. So going in hearing that there was going to be puzzles, I was not looking forward to it. Now, there's nothing wrong with puzzles. I just find it takes so much time to complete and takes away from other components of the game. But Eastward did it right. Not only did it really emphasize the fact that you can control 2 different characters, it did a great job at throwing different puzzles in that require different abilities or weapons, or even different types of bombs to complete. It never really felt like a puzzle. It just felt like a portion of the game that I had to use what tactics I had available to me to complete it. Lastly, there's even a whole portion of the game dedicated to offering a stealth portion to it, which I thought was pretty unique. With this game being text-based dialogue and no voice acting within it, it has to utilize the text to really drive the emotions and actions of each one of these characters, regardless if they were major or minor characters. I also feel like the game really capitalized on the relationship between John and Sam. John being a silent protagonist and Sam who is basically talking for both of them. It should have been difficult to build a relationship between these 2 characters, and yet throughout it, you can feel the relationship between the 2 grow and grow. This attachment between these 2 is what ultimately makes everything more emotional and heartbreaking. Even when it comes to minor side characters, it felt like they did a great job at building these characters that would make you feel attached to them. The best example I can give for this is Isabel and Alva. Now, these 2 are not major characters by far, only showing up for about 2 chapters and parts of some others. However, towards the end of the game, you're essentially chasing Isabel. And even though you don't have any direct contact with her, the main characters have such a good relationship with her that it continues to build her own character. Another good example of fantastic character building is William and Daniel. During John and Sam's adventure, you end up meeting a traveling merchant and his robot. These 2, even though being minor characters, play a big role in developing Sam's character. Overall, I feel like Eastward did a good job at making me feel attached to each one of these characters within the story, whether it be a major or minor character. I feel like they did a really good job at using text-based dialogue to build up the relationships between each of these different characters. The progression throughout the game is really measured by collecting the different main weapons and bomb types for John, as well as different abilities for Sam. When it comes to John's equipment, each one of them is either collected or upgraded throughout the main story, so it is more or less unmissable and you should be able to collect almost everything. But Sam, on the other hand, has 2 abilities that are missable. Another portion of the progression system is Johnny's Emporium, which allows you to upgrade the equipment that you have been using with things like gear parts or advanced gear parts. You are able to upgrade each different main weapon for John, which basically makes it stronger and can make your quality of life a bit easier. Another thing you are able to do is upgrade the bag capacity, as well as max bomb capacity and ammo capacity. Originally, I didn't care to even bother upgrading until I finally did upgrade, and let me tell you, there is a significant difference. And you are able to tell from the beginning how much of an increase each one of these weapons can really gain. Throughout the game, you will also gain 3 different upgrades to John's pan, which can make a significant difference in combat situations. Combine that with Sam's bubble, and you have a very dangerous combination. Cooking throughout the game is something so simple that you would not think plays a role in the game. Throughout the game, you will collect ingredients and combine those as well as using spices to make certain dishes. This really does play a huge role within the game. Not only does having the ability to cook give you the ability to heal in the middle of a fight, which is super helpful because there aren't too many ways to heal within this game other than purchasing healing items from the merchant, but it also allows you to have a way to gain additional hearts to help block out damage. Some foods also provide additional boosts, whether it's reduced damage from enemies, reduced ammo consumption, or a damage boost. This can really change the way you play the game, especially since you can plan each one of your fights, or since you have the ability to gain additional additional damage, it can really help you in a difficult fight or combat sequence. Sometimes you can find having the reduction in damage taken can possibly save you also. Audio is probably going to be my shortest section, and honestly that just has to do with the fact that I'm not a big audio buff when it comes to games. However, this game did an absolutely fantastic job with the soundtrack. Whether you were facing off against a boss, running away from the miasma, or even during the cooking, each one of the tracks really set the tone and mood of the game during that portion of it. I personally really enjoyed the audio for this game. The retail price of the game is $24.99 on Steam. The game has been out for a while now, and you are able to find it on sale at some places. As I'm currently recording this, the game is 50% off on Steam. Honestly though, for the retail price, I would still recommend purchasing the game. In my opinion, it's a great deal. With about a 20-hour main story, a fun combat system, and super simple and enjoyable cooking system, the game is well worth the ask price. Even having an enjoyable cast of characters that bring you in emotionally and really have you invest yourself in the story. Yes, the story itself has its issues, but if you're able to overlook that, then this game will definitely be worth your money. There you have it, there's my review of Eastward. If you enjoyed my review or found it helpful, please drop a like down below. If you enjoyed my content and want to see more reviews, please consider subscribing and checking out my other reviews. If there's a game you want to see me review, drop a comment down below. Thanks for watching.